Well, here we are with the second episode of Dating After Divorce. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing Monique Davis Dotson share her experience with dating after divorce. And now I'm equally as excited to introduce my next guest. She is the wonderful Stacy Sadler. She's a betrayal trauma specialist, a speaker, an author, a mom of two, and you have been divorced for 7.5 years, right?
Correct. You got it right.
Yeah. So, excuse me. Let's just get right to the hard stuff.
Okay.
I'm sure when you were a little girl, you didn't have the fairy tale of being a divorced woman.
Not one bit.
So, how did you get here?
Well, it's funny because I walked into a single mom Sunday school class one day and I was giving a talk of a Sunday school class at my church, which was really hard for me to walk into. And I'll backtrack if you want me to tell my story. But I was giving a talk and this was a church I had been at married. I won't say with my husband because he didn't go to church with me much unless I, you know, put a cattle prod underneath him, which I got tired of doing. And I said, I never wanted this for my life. And everyone in the room, those women go, did you think we did either? Like somehow I thought I was unique, you know?
Right.
And the truth was they looked at me like, yeah, none of us did, you know? So yeah, I didn't, it was not wanted at all. So you want me to go back and tell you my story?
Yeah, tell us the story. I think it's important.
So I was married pretty much right out of college. I met my husband in a bar in Houston, and we got engaged after 3 months, and we were married after 10. We were engaged for 10, so maybe a whole year, and we got married. And we were young, we had no chance to get to know each other, and there was trouble right off the bat. He suffered from depression, and I didn't understand that at all. And it was just trouble from day one. And we were separated a lot because he was controlling and abusive. And I didn't know what to do with that. I just had never experienced that before. So we got some help, and things were
What
somehow.
wait, was it real help or like help in quotes help?
Well, there wasn't anything real identifiable as an issue. I mean, I don't know that they called him out on his control or anything like that. I just know we were sick puppies. I remember I remember a book that was given to us and it said When Victims Marry.
Mm,
And the bride had like a black like a hole for a face, like nothing.
wow.
So it was like, are you calling me a victim? And maybe I was. I don't even know those early days, but um there was nothing identifiable in the marriage at that point, but things started getting better. Well, what I didn't know why they got better was because he started using drugs.
Mm,
And so his rage and his anger and his controlling jealousy kind of went underground because he was numbing it. So I was like, well, okay, then I guess we can have kids. He was wanting kids from day one. And so I had my son, and things seemed okay. And then I got pregnant with my daughter 4 years later. I'm not saying things were great during that time, but they weren't as bad as they were in the beginning. So basically, we went through a lot of years of bankruptcy, addiction. He was addicted to painkillers.
mm.
He had migraine headaches, and it ended up putting him as an addiction, getting him an addiction to painkillers. So it was a lot of years of turmoil and craziness. And I stayed home and watched my kids and worked for him in his business, which was chaos. And finally, I decided that working for him, I guess he looked at it like it was part of my vows. And so
Mhm.
he thought it was a huge sense of betrayal when I said, I will hate you if I work for you any longer. Because he ran his business very illegitimately, let's just say. So, I just started finally getting healing for myself, going to groups like boundaries groups and codependency groups and learning for myself that I could be okay even if he wasn't. And I go to Al Anon and 12 step groups and things like that. And I started seeing how unhealthy he really was. And he had a fully developed addiction by then to opiates. And drew the line in the sand, and he went and got help for his addiction. But he never did the deep dive. He never did the hard work. So basically, I had a dry drunk on my hands, and all that anger came back out again. And now my kids were around to see it. And that was
Wow.
terrifying. And I had to set boundaries and say, you either get help or I'm done. And basically, I created so much space between us that he went to the arms of a woman that was 20 years younger than me and said, if you keep doing all this recovery stuff and church stuff, then I'm going to hang out with her. And that's what he did. And so started having an affair, and we were separate, and, you know, some years of separation, and it was a big old mess, basically. But
Yeah.
I had to get my master's degree in counseling to figure out really how unhealthy it really was.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes, right? You start reading and educating yourself, and you're like, oh man, I thought I was healthy, or I thought I had dealt with this, or I thought this was fine. And you're like, I'm a mess.
Oh, I was such a mess. I looked at the abuse cycle, and I remember being a counselor going, oh my gosh, if they all knew that I was living in this. But it also spurred me on to say, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I can't live like this anymore. I have to set boundaries.
I heard some courageous things that you said, even in the beginning of like just a recognition that you couldn't even work for him. You probably didn't even know like healthy boundaries or how to communicate that, but it was just enough of a knowing to say, this doesn't work. And I have to remove myself from this situation.
It went against my value system. And now I know I felt it in my body. I was
Hmm.
stressed. I had headaches all the time because what he was doing was wrong. And I never knew things weren't supposed to feel good. My body was telling me, though, for sure.
Right. That's the body keeping the score for sure.
Absolutely.
So tell me, I know we're going to get into the dating piece and this ties into it, but how do you move from this place of like, my husband says because I put up boundaries that that's why he's now going into the arms of someone else? How do you enter a dating space feeling like your boundaries are what caused the end of your marriage?
Oh my gosh. Good question. I had done enough work on boundaries to know that boundaries were a good thing. In fact, funny story, fast forward, I don't know, a few years later, I was speaking in California, and one of my topics was boundaries. And a few weeks before, have I told you this story?
Yes, but I was hoping you would tell it again. It's
So,
amazing.
so a few weeks before, I always talk on boundaries. I talk to betrayed women, and I talk on boundaries. And what's one of my pieces? And I'm putting together this talk, and I'm like, I can't do this because I was setting some boundaries with my daughter at home, and she was about 18 or 19, had graduated high school, and she said, bye, see ya. And she decided to go live with her dad and the other woman who had just gotten married.
Mm.
And she said, screw you with boundaries, basically. And she moved in with them. And then on Facebook, she got a new job. And I was like, way to go. So proud of you. She deleted my comment and making comments to the other woman. Thank you so much. You're just like a mother to me. And it was painful times. I mean, it was double whammy betrayal
For
and
sure.
brought all that. And so I knew what I had to do was give the talk and say, when I set boundaries, people I love leave me.
Mm.
And I believe in boundaries, but ouch, this hurts because when I say no, people go away.
Wow.
So everybody told me, you got to talk, Stacy. You got to say it. And I said, I know, I know, I know. And I pushed through it. And I'm sitting on the beach. I always extend my vacations with my own little beach time, especially when they're in tropical places.
Right.
And I'm sitting on the beach at Laguna Beach. And I'm just thinking, wow, thinking about my talk the day before. And I'm just like, okay, God, you're good. I'm going to be okay. And I was thinking about quoting Dave Stoop from New Life about a defensive hope. And then I remember talking about hope distortion, Henry Cloud. and something just said, turn around. And I turn around on the beach, and who is behind me in the flesh but Henry Cloud?
God provides like manna, right?
And I turn around and I look at the ocean and I go, you did not. I can't believe it. I just start crying because it's like he said to me, Stacy, you are so important to me and boundaries are so right. I see you. I hear you. And I just couldn't believe it. And I turned around again. I was like, no, this can't be. And I got a picture on my phone. And finally I turned around and said, are you Henry? He goes, yes. And I said, hey, I'm a new life counselor. And I told him the story. He introduced me to his family. It was the greatest thing. But, and my little one's next door, not next door, next bedroom over right now. Hello,
Oh,
Windar.
yeah.
And she is in my life and she is back here and everything's okay. But in that moment, that betrayal did not feel very good at all.
Yeah, you know what I love about that story? Like, it never gets old, first of all. So thank you for telling it because I was going to ask you about it anyway. But what I love about it is that, like, God could have like brought a boundaries book or a sign that was like, yeah, you're on the right track. But he's like, nope, I'm going to bring you the author right here, right now, to give you tangible evidence,
Yeah. Yeah. That
uh,
you're that yeah.
unmistakable, like no question.
It's
I mean,
crazy. And
short of God Himself coming there, I
yeah,
can't imagine what else you could have done.
he's done that a lot of times with me. There we go. Lights again. He's done it so many times with me. And God is so lavish. I mean, he will lavish his love on us if we're just obedient. I didn't want to give that talk because at that moment I thought boundaries sucked. I just want to
Yeah,
be honest. I really
yeah,
did. But I did what he asked me to do and he's faithful.
yeah. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So tell us about dating after divorce, right? You are the experienced one on this call. I'm the newbie here.
You could say 7 years of it, 6 years of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a groupie, a new life groupie, and Henry Cloud. I read his book called How to Get a Date Worth Keeping,
Hmm.
and that was it in my mind. Follow those rules, and you'll get a guy. And it said you have 25 or 30 first dates before you ever get serious with anyone.
Hmm.
Now, I wondered whether I should do this or not, but I just dug out my journal, and this is the 45 date.
Oh,
And I stopped at who I thought was the man, and
yeah.
what, but it goes, uh, Mr. Wonderful, Mr. Cheapskate, Ewid, he was a widow, Mr. C.S. Lewis, he was a C.S. Lewis scholar. And I went down with finally I just started putting their names. But I learned so much about myself during that time. I learned I learned that my tolerance for a bunch of bull crap was really low.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, I have some stories. You
Yeah.
want me to tell a story that's really crazy?
Yeah. Tell us one. People need to know the truth about what this is like.
God, I didn't know I was going to tell this. I don't know what number he is, but this was early on in the process. She asked me if there's anything off limits, but I'm just going to say it because so this guy met him at Starbucks and I guess maybe online or talking on the phone. He said something like, you know, I'm into breasts. And my comment back today, I would say goodbye and I'd hang up the phone. Early on, I was like, well, there's no problem there.
Right? You're like, I have those.
I'm well endowed. And I just said it like that, not realizing that is such a suggestive, flirty comment. I mean, I was naive.
Yeah.
So we're at Starbucks and he says, yeah, I sure like women with a nice rack. And I went, "Mm," and then he said, yeah, and he kept going with the innuendos about big boobs, basically. Finally, I said, that sounds a little objectifying. He goes, I don't know what you mean. And I kind of blew it off. Well, after we went to Starbucks, he sent me a video. I hope I can say the name of it without offending.
Go ahead. This is called blow the whistle, right? We tell the truth.
And it was a YouTube video and it was called Ghost Tits. And if you look it up, it's still on there. And it's a video about a man who thought he was married to a woman with big breasts, but then he had a nightmare that she didn't have them. So he holds up this bra and like they're like, no, she's always been flat chested. So it's like a parody on this show, and no, but she's never had big breasts, and he's thinking about all the time she's had big breasts. And then at the end of it, he finds a little sliver of the sexy big bra in the thing. So it's like there's a conspiracy against him. He sends that to me. So then he texts me back and says, why aren't you answering me? And I said, I found that very offensive. And then like a year later, he said, why did we never work out? And I said, then I told him. So
Because you're an idiot.
because you're an idiot. That's right. But early on, I'm embarrassed to say I fed right into that because I didn't know. I just was naive. And I thought, well, that's what all men talk about.
Right. That's what my thought is like the world has changed so much. And like you said, you got married, in college. You're young, you are clueless. So you go into this marriage, you're in this marriage all of your adult life, then you come out of the marriage and the world is a completely different place.
That's
It's
right.
not the same place where you went in. But you're also coming out of the marriage with like this certain naivety because you're not aware, but then also some wisdom because of what you've been through. And how do you like put all of that together? I mean, I'm looking at your list and my stomach is turning a little bit
I
because
know.
I'm
I
like, I don't think I have it in me to do 45 first dates.
and I didn't want to show it for that reason. I really didn't want to show it for that reason. But you got to remember this happened over years.
Yeah, but still, it's
And some of them were just coffee,
mhm,
and a lot of them were just coffee. And that was the first thing I would say was, let's just make a quick meetup.
yeah.
And I
So
wanted to
that's
meet quick so that I could get that out of the way and know whether I spent hours and hours and hours on the phone with somebody.
right. So is that a tip that you would give women as they're entering the landscape of dating after divorce is to do the quick meetup so it's not awkward or uncomfortable?
I think you spend 2 or 3 months on the phone with a guy and then you meet him and you go, "Uh-oh." I mean, that's awful because what's it based upon? Chemistry, looks, all that, and it feels like whatever depth you've had, it feels real shallow. So to
Mhm.
me, it's like, check the guy out in the beginning and, you know, and determine whether this is somebody you wanna invest an hour with or not. And then meet up quick. I would talk to him on the phone. That would be my deal. So it would be like, um, he would, I'd talk to him on the app or whatever, dating app, which I did. And then we would switch to phone. And I didn't have a problem with guys calling me on my phone. I've never
Mhm.
had anybody abuse it and all this time. Some women are kind of freaked out about it. And and then I would invite a phone call and then a coffee date.
Okay. Yeah, that was before COVID, right? When when
Oh,
we
yeah.
had
Well, yeah, and COVID has changed things for sure. So
yeah.
maybe walk in the park now or something like that.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
during COVID, I decided I was done for a while, so I really haven't had to do much COVID dating.
Yeah, I think it COVID has changed a lot of things, but especially dating and this whole like even people who were used to dating apps now are having to figure out like, do I want to meet up or what if I can't meet up? Like, are we doing Zoom dates now or video dates, so to speak? And so I think that it's going to continue to change until we establish some sort of normalcy, you know,
Agreed.
once our numbers go down.
And I
So
think it shows you something about the resiliency of a man if he can get creative or not.
for sure, for sure. So how do you balance this? Now you're a therapist, right? You're not a newbie out here anymore. You've been doing this. You hear the worst of the worst stories,
Mhm.
right? All day, every day with your clients. That's what you're hearing. How do you balance this? I'm a therapist, but I'm a woman who's single, but I'm also a woman who has been behind the curtain, so to speak, and knowing what's possible out there.
Well, I think I'm pretty hard to date because of that. I ask a lot of hard questions
Yeah.
and I demand a lot. I think one of the reasons that I don't I don't get too jaded is because I also believe in connection and I believe in love and I believe in intimacy. And I'm lucky enough to would I call it lucky, uh, daring enough, stupid enough, I don't know, but to do some marriage counseling
Mhm.
along the way. And some people I love urged me to just put my toe in the water. And it's so rewarding because I'm learning a lot from married people. I never got uh, the joy of understanding and seeing that connection. I mean, two people that are working their rear ends off to try to tolerate each other. I mean, bottom line.
Yeah.
So I see what's possible and I believe in that.
Yeah.
So that's what keeps me from being jaded.
Yeah. But you said something really important there. Like it does put you in a different bracket in terms of finding a mate that's compatible with the level of emotional intelligence that you bring to the table.
It's hard. It is so, so hard. I've gotten to the point where I've said, hook me up with an addict that's been in recovery for a long time and is working a great program. Because I want them to be able to talk the talk and walk the walk and understand.
Yeah, I was asking this question. I asked 2 questions, which I'll ask you. Number 1, do you think all divorced people should go through some type of therapeutic process, even if it's not therapy, like a support group or a coach or some sort of therapeutic process before they start dating?
For sure.
For
For
sure.
sure. I mean, I think counseling's good for everybody to work through your stuff and to be able to I think this world is a hard world to live in without some therapeutic intervention and without some looking inward. Couldn't people do it in a support group? Yeah, I do. I think so. But yes, absolutely after the pain of a divorce.
Yeah, I think so most people because sometimes the divorce can be amicable, right? You know you need it if it's traumatic, like your experience and mine. You know, because it's the pain is real. But
Right.
when the divorce is amicable, or like let's say you don't have any kids or there's no attachment, or you just realize this is not my person and I made a mistake, it can feel like it's just easy to walk away and go on to the next thing. But really you're ripping apart a union that
Absolutely.
was, you know, connected.
And I think there's work that has to be done. Someone said to me today, "Stacy, why do I miss him so much if he was such a jerk?" I said, "Because your limbic systems were connected. They were bonded.
Right.
And it's gonna take time to break those ties." And I said, "So much of what you fell in love with was the fantasy and the dream of what you thought and what you projected it to be." And she said, "Yep, you're exactly right." So I think working through the grieving process, a lot of
Mhm.
people don't know how to do that themselves. I
Yeah.
think grief share is an awesome thing for people to go through when they've been in a divorce because you have to grieve it. Now, some of the people in grief share don't like it very much that you're there, but divorce care is good that you could do that. But I'm just saying, grief is a huge part of it. And I think people don't know how to grieve properly.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean that applies to anything that people don't know how to grieve, right? The loss of a job or a home or
Absolutely.
a dream that they had, and the realization that that dream is not going to come to pass. You grieve all of those things.
Yeah, that's right.
And
That's right.
so then my second question is, as a mental health professional, as someone who you already recognize that, like I said, your level of emotional intelligence is well above, say, the average person, just because you've been to school, you've been doing this, you see all the good, the bad, the ugly, you're constantly elevating and continuing your education. In terms of dating someone, I know you said, send you someone in recovery, but do you feel like you would almost need to marry another mental health professional?
I'm down to a pastor, a counselor, or someone in recovery.
Yeah.
Um, but I also am trying to leave room in my brain for the person who is in a learning process with that or is open to learning. I don't want to get perfection in my mind. And
Right.
I struggle with that. There was a guy that I friend zoned 3 years ago and said, you're a friend only, because he was a mess. But I was very attracted to him and we stayed good friends. And I had a little COVID slip back in May, March or so, and we became a little bit more than friends. And then I backed up real quick and said, "Wake up, girl. What are you doing?" And friend zoned him again. And he was like, "Okay, you need to help me. You need to help me. You need to do some EMDR on me." I'm like, "No, no, no, I can't do it. I'm attracted to you. That wouldn't work." So I referred him to my old therapist. He has gone every single week, twice a week since May.
Uh-oh, he's getting ready.
Well, we talked the other night. We're starting to talk again as friends, but it's hard because there's a lot of chemistry. And he called me just a minute ago and he said, "I did neurofeedback today." And he said, "I'm bawling my eyes out on the side of the road." And I love a man that can do his work.
Yeah.
So I'm like, "Oh God, that's attractive to me."
He said neurofeedback. I'm so turned on.
Seriously. Seriously. And so, here's a person who's really trying, and so I don't want to get perfection in my head, but I want to get somebody that's open to learning, open to the process, and doesn't have serious, serious character defects.
Yeah, it's so hard. One of my clients looked at me and I was just like educating her on betrayal trauma in the process and kind of like what the guys are experiencing. And she looked at me and she said, "How are you going to date with that level of like language?" She's like, "I'm trying to track with you and understand you, but how are you going to date?" And I'm like, I don't know, And so it's this hard place to be of, I'm still a woman. I'm still a romantic. I still believe in love like you. I still know that one day I think I want to get married again. And so entering into this dating space now with all of these other things feels a little trickier than it did, say, in my 20s. So I want to ask you, as you navigate dating, do you feel like you're hard on yourself because you are a mental health professional? Like, is there a voice in your head saying, "Stacy, you should know better. Remember this theory and that theory and that theory"?
It's horrible. It's horrible. I mean, like, I was just thinking a minute ago, attachment style. Okay, so what are you? Are you an avoider? You vacillator?
Right.
You anxious attachment? Are you? And it's like, but yet I'm learning, but it's like, do I just nix somebody off the bat? I already know I can't be with an avoider, somebody who's closed and isn't open. I had one guy I dated this year and he goes, "Stacy, I'm not going to do your 7-step validation process."
He called you out.
He called me out. But the point was, I said, look, at the end of the day, I need somebody who validates me. And if you can't do it, I'm not going to get my needs met in this relationship. And that was a very brave step for me. He
For
wasn't
sure.
willing to learn it. He wasn't willing to hear it. He's heard me like I was teaching him like a therapist. And maybe it is hard to take off the therapist hat.
Hmm.
Dating is a lot like therapy. So when was your last relationship? Except I can't take notes, which is work
Right.
because I can't remember the stuff. So what happened in that relationship? Oh, okay. So how do you get along with your kids? I mean, like everything that you ask on a first date is something ask on an intake anyway.
Exactly.
Like,
I think as I'm talking to you, I'm like, we need a support group for therapists who date. Like
a
that could be the name of it.
therapist.
TWD, therapists who date. And
Well,
we need somebody to help us like take off the therapist hat, the coach hat, the mental health professional hat. Like you are not a mental health professional today. You are just on a date. And how do you do that?
well, then we also need a TWT, those who date therapist group because we know they really need the support group.
Right? That is true. Those who date therapists. That's right. So that can be the other
The
support group
companion group of it, yes.
on the other side. So I'm going to ask you just go ahead.
We know our own foibles, don't we? I mean,
Yes.
seriously, the reason we're laughing about that is because I know I can be hard. I know it's hard to date me,
Yeah.
but I'm open to hearing and understanding, but I can't unknow what I know over here.
Yeah. You know what's funny is long before, so I have a psychology degree, right? But then I went the corporate route. But even before I had a degree, even before I did any of this was me. All the education did was just give me the proper language. And
Mhm.
so my ex-husband used to get so mad at me and say, "You have a black belt in like emotions, and I can't do that emotional jujitsu with you." And and
Yeah,
it's like not even trying. It's a part of who I am.
it is.
So even apart from the profession, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to turn this off.
I don't think we can. I asked a pastor once, why did these guys in Sunday school never ask me out? And he said they're intimidated. And I
Mhm.
said, what do I do? Dumb myself down? He said, no. He said, just be bold, ask him out. Oh gosh, I don't like that, but I had to learn to be the one to make the first move. I don't like to be that person.
Yeah. So have you gotten better at that? Do you feel more comfortable with that?
Maybe a tad, but not. I mean, somebody I really, really liked, maybe,
Hmm.
but it still feels, I'm still pretty traditional at heart with that.
Right. Yeah. So if you could, we're coming up on time, but if you could give counsel or wisdom or advice to women who are just entering this landscape like me, right? I'm just now at the point where I'm even open to dating. And I say that tentatively because I think I am, but I'm not 100% sure.
Mhm.
After being here for 7 years, you got your list of 40, you've done the first dates, you've done the things, right? You've approached, you've done all the things. What pieces of wisdom do you feel like are important to share?
I guess the first thing that just popped into my head was give yourself grace because you're going to make a whole lot of mistakes.
Hmm.
I'm going to say this. I hadn't dated in so long. I really thought it was going to be like first base, second base, third base, fourth base. Well, when you've gone to fourth base for a long time in your life and it was good, oh, things happen you forget happen in your body.
Hmm.
And so I all of a sudden would find myself in over my head going, what, hold the phones, what happened? And so I learned about God's grace
Hmm.
when I let emotions or whatever take over. So I
Yeah.
think you have to be really graceful with yourself, first of all.
Mhm. Mhm.
Second of all, I would say to do your healing. I wrote a chapter in my book on single parenting on dating. And I say, do your work. Make sure that you have dating takes time, energy, and emotion. Make sure that you have all three. If you don't have those, think about being on the other side of that. If somebody doesn't have time, energy, or emotion for you,
Mm.
do you really have it? Because it's like a part time job.
It is.
It is, especially if you're online dating. The other thing is there's a lot of scammers out there if you're on online dating, and
Mhm.
you have to really, really be careful and get educated. There's a great book that my editor wrote, and I can give it a plug if you want a resource,
Yeah, give it.
called The Grown Woman's Guide to Dating by Margot Starbuck. It is fantastic.
Okay.
I'm lucky enough to be part of a secret group that I can't talk about, and you are too.
Mhm.
But but where we warn women and we learn to be wise, what a catfish looks like, which means like the Adonis who has the picture on the site, and it's
Mhm.
not him, it's some 80-year-old dude sitting at home doing you know what.
Right.
And that happens. If it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. Don't believe it.
Yeah.
So, so I would say be wise, be really wise. Be wise as a serpent, innocent as a dove,
Mhm.
because the scammers are out there. And so I would say talk with other single women that have been there before, and do that. And I love that book. It's a good resource. You know, kids, if you have kids, I think it's important to discuss it with your kids before you just start doing it. I think you say,
Mhm.
how would you feel about mom dating? Of course, it's going to depend on the ages of your kids, but make sure that they have their head around it. Men seem to hook up and all of a sudden introduce him to some woman, and the next thing you know, she's living with them, and that
Mhm.
causes so much disruption in kids.
Mhm.
And it's such against just the way God designed it to be. So I think you avoid the appearance of evil, and I think you really just allow your kids to have a voice in it, or talk through it with them so that they understand that this is what you're doing. I'm not saying get their stamp of approval. I'm just saying check in with them so that they can get their head around it first.
Mhm. Yeah, I think those are all really good, especially the part about knowing what it's going to take to date, the time, the energy, and the emotion. Because people think, oh, I'm ready to date. But like with online dating, you got to be on there chatting and swiping and, having this energy. I was in this group and it was like, ask a guy anything, right? You could ask them questions about dating or whatever. And one of the things that they suggested, which I want to know if you have this, was to have a solid group of male friends that when you feel like you're getting serious about a guy, that they can vet this guy. Do you have that? Do you have a support group of guys that you can go to?
I wish I did. I honestly wish I did. And I'm starting to get bold with my colleagues and just say, hey, keep your eye open. It feels like I'm a little bit saying, I meet. Can you
Mhm.
meet up?
Mhm.
Because it's bringing a personal side in. But I've started to do it because I'm like, I want to meet quality people. So I asked a pastor the other day and I said, this is my shameless plug for, matchmaking. If you find a guy that has done good, we're talking about men, deep work and who's willing to do the deep work. And so he said, yeah, okay, great. And 5 minutes later, he goes, okay, you need to meet my other lead pastor. So when I get back next week from skiing, I'm training a group of pastors all to meet this pastor, and I'm getting paid for it.
Wow. Look at that. That's a
So
way to up your value. Like you have to pay me.
it's to pay me to train you for me to decide whether I even want to date you.
I like it. I like it.
But I guess the point is, it was very vulnerable for me to say that to him, to that pastor, and we were starting to develop a relationship, and one of the things is, as a single woman, it was hard for me to decide what was an appropriate relationship with a married man.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
you know, they're sending me, "Great, we're looking forward to it," winky face, and I'm like, "Okay, gosh, I don't want that to be taken wrong." I know too much. That's and so I tread real lightly on having a group of men. I don't have it. I don't have it. Do you have it?
I'm rebuilding it. I used to have it. But my ex-husband was not real comfortable with my male friends. And so I let them go. And I am in the process of rebuilding it because I feel like, which is also part of the reason why I started coaching guys, is because I feel like it helps me as a woman know how to help my female clients, but it also helps me as a woman know how to interact with men.
Yes. Yes.
And so
I
I'm,
remember when I was really first single, being around the other male counselors, I was kinda like, "Am I giving off?" I was awkward because I didn't feel protected anymore. I felt so vulnerable. And it wasn't that I was attracted. I wondered if they were. I didn't know. It was very a weird thing that I had to work through. I can't even describe what I felt, but it felt very awkward to me in the beginning.
yeah, for sure. And I think, that would be a whole separate conversation to just talk about how our Christian upbringing or Christian influence has kind of made us as women like feel embarrassed or uncomfortable in our own bodies around men.
Oh
Like,
god.
hey, hey, God made me a female. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not hiding that.
That would be another conversation. The pastor that told me that I was intimidating men also told me that he was concerned about the guy I was dating, because he didn't think he could be a spiritual leader for me. And I said, "I'm not sure I need a spiritual leader, but thank you." And he said, "I love you. I'm just concerned." And the pastor told me he loved me, and it was inappropriate. It was just highly
Hmm.
inappropriate. And
Hmm.
when I asked him about what was so urgent that he had to talk to me about, he said, "Never mind. I took an Ambien last night and wasn't making sense."
So he backpedaled, like blamed it on something else.
Well, yeah, but the point is, you don't need to be texting women in your congregation after you've been taking Ambien at night.
Yeah, but I mean that's what I'm saying. Like, did he even really take an Ambien? We don't know. So you're backpedaling it. You're blaming it on something else instead of taking responsibility for that you don't need to be texting women in your congregation.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, so that would be a whole nother conversation. But we have been conditioned be to believe certain things about ourselves and to be shameful about certain things about ourselves and to be aware that, we're responsible for another man's uh
Lust.
thank you. Yes, that's it.
Yes. Yeah, we won't even
We
like.
digress.
Yeah, that would be a different kind of conversation.
Yes.
So tell us, Stacy, first tell us where people can find you. Tell us when the book's coming out so that people can go and get that, and anything else you want to share before we wrap up.
Okay. So www.staceysadler, Stacey, Sadler, Sadler.com, is my website. I have an office in Missouri City. I also do virtual therapy. Also have beach retreats and different types of speaking engagements and things like that. You can find me kind of all over the place. Um, and what else did you tell me to ask? Good to
When
ask.
your book is coming out.
Okay, yeah. So my deadline's April 30th. I hear it takes a long time afterwards, but the book is going to be called Understanding and Loving Your Child as a Single Parent. It's part of a series, and my co-author Steve Arterburn, and it's part of a series of books that he puts out. So probably be maybe another year. I don't even know, but it's fun and exciting. So yeah, I'm just beyond floored because this is a whole new area for me. Never knew that I could write a lick. and it's kind of fun actually.
Well, I mean, you're so full of wisdom. I think it's just a natural extension of that, right? To take all of that wisdom and put it in a place that even if people don't have access to you directly, that they can gain access to the wisdom that you have indirectly.
I
And
hope so. I hope so. And I guess I just want to say to the women out there that have been hurt and been in pain, don't let the enemy steal the joy from you of trying to find love again. You've learned, you're wiser now for the process, you know more. Take that and use it, and don't let the beauty still come. Let the best years of your life still come, whether you I mean, don't close yourself off to the prospect. That's the worst thing that could happen. Keep open and keep okay with you. When you do your work and you're okay with you, I think really finally I'm truly okay with me, and I'm okay being single for the first time ever. But I've done a lot of work in my own therapy, a lot to
yeah,
get
and it's a beautiful place to be, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
I thank you. You know, I love you to
I
death.
love you to death. Right back.
Yes. Stacy is she's really not tooting her horn enough. But I'm just going to tell you that she changed my life. Like just being in proximity to her has made me a better person. She's such an encourager naturally, apart from being a therapist. And she is probably one of the most authentic people that I have ever met. So, and I hope that came across today, right?
Hope
Uh,
so.
and so, thank you so much for just coming and sharing like you always do. Thank you for being willing to educate us who are a few steps behind you on the journey and to really just be honest about it, to be a human who's on a journey,
Yeah.
figuring things out along the way. It's a beautiful thing to watch.
Thank you.